concepts, or what are the major headings which we are trying to study in this chapter. As I said, the chapter is about the respiratory system. So we will be studying about respiration and overview. What is respiration? What is oxygen? Why is oxygen important? Just a short beginning. Then we will study about respiratory system. Of course, we are talking about respiratory system in humans. So human respiratory system structure. How does a human respiratory system appear, look in detail? Every part will be studied in more detail than what you know from your lower standards. Then, as I've told you, the basic rule of biology, you study these systems. First you study their structure and then you study their function. कैसा दिखता है और क्या करता है. So then we come to this function. Here we will understand how does breathing happen in humans. Okay, so the entire working will be understood from the time the air from the environment. How does it enter the human body? Which all parts does it travel? How does it reach the lungs? From the lungs, how does it reach the blood? From the blood, how does it reach the tissues? Why is oxygen able to go to the cells? How does carbon dioxide come into the lungs? So it is going to be understanding of exchange of air from the environment till the cell level, and of course in the opposite direction as well. So this is by and large the map of the chapters. And lastly, what we did in the previous chapter as well, a few diseases, what is called as a disorders of the respiratory system, some illnesses. Okay, students, this is what is called as the application of biology. Okay, so first you study the normal, and then in the last section you understand when something goes wrong in the normal respiratory system, which diseases do we encounter, do we come across. So that is disorder. So by and large, this is the map of the chapter. You can just freeze your screen for a few seconds, pause it and just try to remember this so that you know the flow in which I will be taking the chapter further ahead with you. So as I take ahead the first part, respiration and overview, I would like to ask you a very simple question. The question which so many people have asked you since your growing days. Oxygen. Why do we need oxygen? And the answer which most of us get is oxygen is required for our survival. Now this sounds good. This sounds truth as well. Oxygen is important for our survival. But just think over it. Is it scientific? Oxygen is required for me to live. Where is the science? How can we scientifically explain that oxygen is required for my survival? Okay, when someone says food, okay, we say, okay, food is required for us to live because food gives us energy. Our cellular structures, our body organs are made up of nutrients. Okay, our cell membrane is made up of fats. Okay, and the many structures in our body, our muscles are made up of protein. So that is how we explain scientifically that food is important for survival. How is oxygen important for survival? This is very interesting. If you look at this particular slide, this boy is taking in air. This air is going into his respiratory system. From there it's going into the blood. From there the oxygen is going into the cell. This boy at the same time is eating food as well. And we all are under the assumption that food gives us energy, which is partially true, not totally true. The complete truth is that when we take food, food goes into the cells, which is shown clearly in this picture by eating. They've given the example of glucose entering the cell. And when we breathe in, when we take in oxygen, oxygen goes into the lungs. Then it goes into the blood, then it goes into the cell, and then inside the cell, glucose reacts with oxygen, and only then we get energy. This is a very crucial point of respiration. Only glucose going into the cell does not give you energy. You get energy only when glucose reacts with oxygen inside the cell. It is only then when you get energy. So, food alone has got energy in the locked form. With the help of oxygen, the energy is unlocked. Okay, so the whole purpose of oxygen in our life is it helps in the release of energy from food, and therefore helps in survival. Now you understand. When you are fasting, you can do away without food, but you cannot do away without oxygen, because food is stored. We are not storing oxygen, and therefore we are eating 2-3 times a day, but we are breathing 24 hours a day. I hope that concept is coming out very clean. So this is an overview about the importance of oxygen in our life. Now I would like to cover a good short heading with you about steps of respiration. Which are the steps of respiration? Now you look at this boy. What is the first thing he's doing? He's taking air from the environment, and this air is going into his lungs. So that is step number 1. And this step is called as breathing. Now understand, students, where does step number 1 end? Step number 1 ends in the lungs. The moment air reaches the lungs, it is end of step 1. From the lungs, the air has to enter, the oxygen rich air has to enter the blood. So that becomes step number 2. So step number 2 is called as exchange of gases through lungs. The difficult word is alveoli. Alveoli are the basic functional units of lungs. Of course, we will study alveoli further ahead in the chapter. The moment oxygen enters the blood, now try and understand. Breathing is air from the environment going into the lung. Second step is air from the lung passing through the alveoli and entering the blood. The third is this oxygen rich air gets transported through the blood. So now step number 3 is transportation of gases in the blood, and then the blood carries it everywhere. Now the oxygen is in the blood. From the blood, the next thing you are seeing is a cell, and in between there is a cell membrane, as we all know it. Okay, so the next step is exchange of gases from the blood. In this picture, you can assume these arrows as blood vessels which contain blood. Okay, so the next is transport of gases from the blood into the cell. Okay, so at every juncture we have given a separate step, because at every step a lot of complex events are happening. This is the basis of the chapter, so I want you to understand the breakdown of these steps. From blood to tissues. And lastly, the oxygen is reached inside the cell. Inside the cell, the oxygen will react with food. There will be a series of chemical reactions which will happen in the cytoplasm, and there will be a series of chemical reaction which will happen in the mitochondria, and finally in the mitochondria you will get energy. And this last step is therefore called as cellular respiration. Okay, because in human beings, when we talk respiration, we are connecting it with oxygen. When someone says respiration, the connection is with oxygen. So in the last step, it is a cell which is actually using the oxygen, and therefore the term cellular respiration comes in over here. So I hope this is very clean and clear. I would just like to come back on the board so that you understand the sequence clean. Okay, breathing brings the air from the environment into the lungs, up till the lungs. Then the air, oxygen rich air, has to go from the lungs and it has to enter the blood. This is just entry into the blood. Exchange of gases through the lungs, through the alveoli. The moment it enters into the blood, then from the blood it has to get transported throughout the blood, everywhere. So it goes everywhere into the blood. So transportation of gases in the blood. Then it has gone everywhere in the blood. Now it has to enter the tissues. Okay, so the next step is exchange of gases from blood to the tissues. So now how does it exactly enter? Okay, what are the events? We will study it in detail further ahead in the chapter. And lastly, after it has entered the tissues, meaning it has entered the cells, what does it do inside the cell, and how does it finally give you energy? It does give you energy finally, and that's why this is the last step. How does it exactly happen? We study further ahead. And therefore the last step is therefore called as cellular respiration. So I just want you to pick up these concepts cleanly. Okay, that this is a sequence. So if I can just underline the key points, you understand what I mean. Breathing brings air from the environment. And so from the environment it goes to the lungs. From there it goes in the blood. Okay, from there it goes to the tissues, and from there it goes to the cells. So all I can tell you is the journey is like this: environment to lungs, to entry in the blood, to entry in the tissues, and to doing something inside the cell. Okay, so I hope these steps are clear. We have a slide on these steps which I'm trying to refer. You can pause your screens and read more about them in detail. And now I would just like to quickly give you a review of respiratory organs in different organisms. We are not going in detail in this topic, so I'm just going to name a few important animals and their organs, respiratory organs. Okay, by and large what we are talking about is, if you talk about plants don't have any respiratory organs per se. They don't have special organs of respiration, but exchange of gases does happen through them with the help of stomata. Then we talk about aquatic animals. That is fishes. How do fishes breathe? Do you know that, students? Fishes breathe through their gills. You can see the picture of gills in there. That's a wonderful picture to see gills. You've got, I think, one more there. Oh, yeah. We can look at this one. It's a nice pic. How do humans breathe? Humans breathe with the help of their lungs. Okay. There you see humans. And the smallest unit of the lungs, which we have tried to magnify here and show you the alveoli. Okay, of course, we'll be studying it in a lot more detail as we go further ahead in the chapter. Okay, these are the gills. Okay, this area of the fish. Whenever we see a fish underwater, okay, or through a pond which is there in our houses, we very often see there's a bubble coming down here through this part of the fish. And then we've got some of these animals like flatworm, they breathe through their body wall. Okay, then you've got arthropods, this is the cockroach family. Okay, this is the housefly there. Okay, they breathe through spiracles. Okay, and these organs are called as tracheoles. So these are the respiratory organs in arthropods. I'm writing arthropods. Arthropods is the housefly and the mosquito and the cockroach family. Spiracles are the main breathing organs. So these are the different organs in different organisms which help them in getting the air from the environment into their bodies. Okay, this is how the exchange of gases happens in different organisms. Out of it, the focus of today's chapter is exchange of gases or breathing in human beings with the help of lungs. And now let us try and take this study of breathing in humans further ahead. So this is again a picture. I think I've just tried to show you this about respiration in different organisms, and we come to this one. Okay, so out of all the events of respiration, we figured that breathing is the first event. And breathing in human beings is about getting the air from the environment into the human body, for which you require certain respiratory organs. And the respiratory organs in humans are lungs. Now if you look at lungs in the location, lungs are located in the region of the chest, inside the body. You cannot see anyone's lung directly from the surface, through the surface, just how you can see someone else's eyes and just how you can see someone else's ears. Okay, you cannot see anyone's lungs directly. The reason is lungs have been located inside the body. Therefore, direct contact of air, direct contact of the environmental air with the lungs is not possible. And therefore, for the air to reach the lungs, we need a pathway. And if you are following my actions, you are understanding that I am trying to tell you that if these are the lungs which are inside the body, alone they cannot be enough. We also need this, which acts like a pathway to carry the air up till the lungs. And therefore, the human respiratory system is divided into two parts. There you see the first part is the respiratory tract. And the second part are the actual lungs, which are the respiratory organs. So, air will always first enter the tract, as you see, and then it will reach the lungs, and then later on from that it will go into the blood, which becomes the next step. So we don't discuss that, but we try and understand human respiratory system further ahead. So of course it goes without saying that first I will be teaching you about the respiratory tract, and then I will be teaching you about the respiratory organs. The human respiratory tract starts with the nose. Wonderful pictures. What are the nostrils? From there, if you see, the air enters the pharynx. Pharynx is inside the mouth, so we call it pharynx. From the pharynx, the air then enters the larynx. What is this? Larynx is also called as a sound box, also called as a voice box. If you want to know where larynx is there in you, you can put your hands in this part, just below where you get a little pokey feel here. Okay, you find the pokey feel of course more in boys and less in girls, but if you put your hand in this area and if you talk something and if you feel a vibration, it means you are touching your larynx, because the larynx produces sound, and therefore every time you talk, putting your hand on the larynx, you are able to feel a vibration on your fingers. So that's a confirmation of larynx for you. Then the next part of the respiratory tract is trachea. Trachea is located here, in the region of your neck, near the collar. If you try to put in a finger and you're able to feel a pit, like a khadda, okay, that is the trachea. Here you see, okay, this is trachea, but if you want to actually understand on the human body where is trachea, you have to just put your finger in that pit which we feel in the region of the neck. This is the trachea. It is also called as the windpipe. Just how esophagus is also called as a food pipe, trachea is also called as a windpipe. And this trachea further divides to form bronchi. So here we are, this is a bronchi. Okay, two lungs. So the trachea divides, becomes the right bronchus, the left bronchus and the right bronchus. So it's called as bronchi, plural, singular, bronchus. And now as the bronchi enter the lung, the further parts that we are going to study will come under respiratory organs, because lung is a respiratory organ. So these are the parts of the respiratory tract. Now, if you go further, you see the bronchi divide. Okay, this is a closed lung. This is not a cut lung. This is the lung which is cut. So this lung is intact lung in this diagram. So if you look at this lung, you see the bronchi is further dividing into smaller tubes. Can you see? Can you observe it becoming like the roots of a tree? Okay, branching out. This, if you see this labeling clearly, this is bronchioles. And then finally, if you observe, all these branches are ending into some bunch of grape-like structures. And these grape-like structures are called as alveoli. And why do I write them in red? Okay, because they are the actual organs which carry out exchange of gases. They are the actual tissues, they are the actual organs through which air passes to enter into the blood, and therefore they are the most important parts of the entire respiratory system. Rest everything what we have mentioned, they are pathways. Okay, they are just mediators, but the final important organ is the alveoli. Okay,